Welcome to the Exploring Author YouTube channel, or welcome back if you're already subscribed. Today we are in Eschau, Germany, in Bavaria, in Lower Franconia or Unterfranken, and I have 3 legends for you today in this region as we hike to a 13th century monastery. Now 2 of the legends have to do with the monastery, and they're a little dark. One of them is not so dark, but the one is extremely morbid. One has to do with a silver jug and people drinking from it. It's magical, allegedly. And then the other one has to do with a nun who was just trying to leave the monastery. But as always on Wednesday episodes, I'm first going to tell you the legend, and then we're going to examine, could this have historically been true, or plausible, or possible, or is it just simply, more than likely, folklore or legend? And that's what we're going to do today. So enough of my jibber jabber, let's start the adventure. Oh, what a day, what a day. It is beautiful, birds are chirping. There's a rooster in the background there. He's happy or not happy, I'm not really sure. But we are hiking to the monastery, and that means we're leaving the town of Eschau, like I said earlier. All right, man, we hear you, buddy. You want some food or something. Hopefully somebody feeds him. We're walking alongside a stream right here. And why that's important is because the story that I'm going to tell you, the little more fun story, it takes place on this particular route. So allegedly, it takes place on this route. So we're gonna be hiking along this stream, I hope, all day, because my legs are absolutely cooked. I've been doing a lot of hiking the last few days, and I think today I would like it if it's a little bit easier. We are deep in the Spessart right now. And when you're deep in the Spessart, sometimes you end up just going straight uphill. I don't think that's gonna be the case, knock on wood. But let's get into this first legend. So the legend starts out on this path, on this very path, next to the stream over here. And people would walk always in the evening. And during the evening when they're walking, they would hear these sounds from the bushes or from, they're not really sure where they were hearing it from. And it would sound like, achoo, achoo, as if somebody was sneezing. But here's the thing, every time they looked, nobody was there. And this always happened in the night. It never happened during the day. So other than me doing my acting there with my sneezing, we're not gonna hear it today. So when the townspeople were looking for what they assumed was sneezing, they couldn't find anybody, and that's when it started to feel wrong. It felt like, what is going on? Maybe there's a spirit. Now remember, these stories take place oftentimes 400, 500, 600 years in the past. So keep that in mind when I'm telling you these tales. So one night, a man named Fritz is walking back from the town of Rück, which, as you'll find out, is a real town. And he's walking back, and he's kind of distracted. He's got a lot on his mind. He's not thinking about the tales that he always hears about. And all of a sudden, from the bushes, he hears, achoo! And because he's distracted, he says, God bless you, or Gesundheit. And then he hears an answer back from the bushes. And the answer is, oh, thank God, now I'm relieved. And then it was silent. And ever since then, nobody has ever heard a sneeze coming from these bushes along this path right here. Now, the question is, of course, how much of this folklore or how much of this legend is historically factual and how much is more than likely just folklore? So let's start with the historical fact. The town of Eschau, as you've seen, is a real place. Rück is a real place. It's on the other side of the monastery we're heading to today. This path right here was a real path, or nearby was the path they took in the Middle Ages. That's all historically true. And in fact, the stream mentioned in this tale is right here. It's right there. So those are historical facts. And during this time frame, there were a lot of ghost tales on these routes in the Spessart. That was very common. And by the way, all the folklore that I tell you on these Wednesday episodes, they're all real. They are all documented or collected in some book, or I get them from historical societies directly, like local historical societies. I'm not inventing these stories. I'm an author, but I'm not that good. But now it's time to figure out which part of the story was more than likely folklore, legend, or just a story that people told rather than historical fact. I think it's quite obvious that the spirit in the forest that continues to achoo and sneeze more than likely was folklore or a story that people told. Anything along these routes, like those types of ghost stories or spirit stories, more often than not, I'm going to give the door a little bit of a crack open for those who believe in the paranormal. But more than likely, they were just simply folklore stories that people told. Maybe as well, historically back in those days, when people couldn't explain things, sometimes they resorted to coming up with stories or folklore or supernatural. So that also could have been the case. But is it real? More than likely not. So that was the fun tale. And now we're going to continue marching on, and we're going to continue hiking, because now we're going to get into a little bit darker tales that exist at the monastery. There's 2 of them today. But the monastery, I've never been here. I've heard it's pretty cool. So we're also going to learn a little bit about the history of the monastery before I get into the tales. But let's keep on hiking, and hopefully this route stays easy today for my legs. Please, please, please. Watch my head here. This place is spectacular. This is going to be amazing. But before we get into the folklore and the legend, I'm just looking around. This thing is a lot bigger than I anticipated. Before we get into the folklore, the legends, and then decide what's true from these legends, let's learn a little bit of high-level history about this place, because the legends will make a lot more sense then. And oh my God, just take it all in for now, because this place is huge. So this place actually goes back a long way. It was founded in 1232 by Ludwig II of Rieneck. Not long after that, they built the first church here in a late Romanesque style. Over time, though, things changed. By 1568, the monastery had been abandoned and officially dissolved by the Archbishop of Mainz. The last abbess died a few decades later in 1601, which kind of marks the end of that original chapter. After that, the site didn't just disappear. It was handed over to the Jesuits for a while, and they used it through the late 1500s and into the 1600s. Then in 1753, the church you see today was built, Baroque style, dedicated to Saint Sebastian. When the Jesuit order was dissolved in 1773, the property went back under Mainz control again. And since 1814, it's been managed by a foundation connected to Aschaffenburg. Today, it's actually still in use, but in a completely different way. It's now a vocational training and special education center supporting young people in a boarding-style environment. So now it's time to get into the legend about a silver jug, and this thing is directly connected to the Himmelthal Monastery. And by the way, this is Easter Monday, and I'm really glad it's Easter Monday because everything in Germany is closed, because this kind of operates as a school, as you just learned in the voiceover. Probably wouldn't be good if I was filming while the kids are out here doing their activities. But let's get into this legend. As I said, it's connected to the Himmelthal Monastery, and back then there used to be, allegedly, a mill connected to this monastery. Now there was a miller's daughter, and her name was Katrine. Now Katrine would play around here, and she'd actually play at this very stream right here. And when she was playing, she found some stream spirits or some water spirits that would give her gifts like pearls and flowers and various other things that a little girl would like. And so they were very friendly to her back then. Now, as Katrine grew up, she fell in love with a musician, a poor musician, kind of how the stories usually go, right? They're poor musicians that she fell in love with. Remember, these stories take place 400, 500, 600 years in the past. So back then, if you were a poor musician, you had nothing to offer the miller's daughter or the mill's daughter. So unfortunately, her parents forbade it. They said, absolutely not, you need to marry somebody of a higher class. So Katrine, being a good daughter, listens to her parents and decides to marry a fellow miller, another miller in the area. And so he has a little bit more money, maybe more social class. But on their wedding night, the water spirits came up and gifted them a silver jug. But the water spirits were extremely clear about the rules of this silver jug. You can fill it with water once per day, only once per day, and it will turn the water into wine. But once per day, very explicit rules. However, later on down the road, the musician came back in town, and the musician had his wine, but said, you know what, I want a little bit more wine. And they said, no, 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 you can't do that. The water spirits are very clear. He says, meh, I'm doing it anyway. So he goes down there himself and fills the jug up once more, and it turns into wine, and they all drink it. But the problem with that second jug was it didn't really taste like wine. It actually kind of tasted like blood. It was darker, it tasted like blood, it was definitely not wine. So they all went to bed, and the next morning, Katrine, she was no longer on this earth. She was gone, unalived. Later that week, the musician got into a fight, probably in his grief, moment of grief. and he got in a fight and also unalived. Then the miller, the new husband, also got into a fight with his father and unalived his own father. And that was pretty much the end of it. That was the end of the story. There was no more to that legend. And it really goes to show that when they did that, they made one mistake and it was pretty disastrous. But how much of that tale and that morbid legend is actually historically accurate? Well, we know already because you've seen video of it. The monastery is a real monastery and it does date back to the 13th century. So this would have been around when that story came about. The Main Valley, this entire region, is very well known for wine. It's one of the best wine regions in all of Germany. So that would have been true, that they would have been drinking wine, presumably from this region. The mill. Well, there were a lot of mills in this area, and the monastery would have been associated with mills and millers back in those times. So all those things could have been factually true, or are factually true, from that story. So which part of this legend is more than likely just story or folklore? Number one, Katrine, the silver jug, the water spirits. Yeah, no, they aren't real, sorry. Never historically documented that that person existed, or the water jug, or the water spirits. However, water spirits are quite common in German folklore for giving gifts to other people and things like this. So that actually is quite common in folklore and storytelling within Germany. Now, the one rule, don't break it or else, dun dun dun. Yeah, that's also very common in folklore around this region, around Germany, and pretty much around the world. More than likely what occurred is this story was developed or written or spoken, probably spoken more than written, because they were trying to teach people to resist temptation, about consequences from your decisions, and other moral values like that. I think we can all relate to that. If you have kids especially, I'm sure you're trying to teach them today those exact moral values. So those were all more than likely not factually true, and there's no historical documentation to back up any of that. But as I said, the locations are real. These are real historical places, and same thing with the last folklore, and same thing with the next one that we're going to get into. These places are real, but is the rest of the story real? That's what we're trying to figure out mostly. But it is cool that we can actually pinpoint where these legends originate. So this legend also is tied to the monastery, which is right behind me. And this one takes place a few hundred years ago as well. And back then, this place had a lot of nuns and was very religious and very strict with its religious vows. But over time, the monastery became more wealthy, or so the legend goes. And with wealth, everything became a bit more relaxed, and they weren't so strict with their vows. Now, a church official from a larger monastery was sent over here to remind them gently that, hey, you need to be strict with your vows, quit slacking off with all of those. And for the most part, most of the nuns listened, except for one. And her name is Agnes, and Agnes is the main character of this story, or of this legend. So Agnes openly mocks the church official and his directive, so much so that she doesn't believe in the punishment at all, nor does she believe in the devil anymore. And in fact, Agnes has been seeing a huntsman from the local community on the side, secretly, of course. And Agnes decides that she's going to run away with this huntsman and live her life the way she wants to live it. So Agnes agrees to meet the huntsman and run away with him, and on a stormy night is when it took place. Now the huntsman, wanting to see Agnes, cross the river during a storm. I'm talking lightning, thunder, maybe not tornadoes, but a lot of the hail. It was bad. And the flooding was going on, and you saw that river. Now that river was a lot higher when this story took place. So the huntsman crosses the river, and unfortunately, the river currents swept him away. And the huntsman is no longer, he's as well. But Agnes didn't know that. Now Agnes decides to meet him anyway. She goes out to meet him and run away from the monastery for good. So as Agnes is fleeing the monastery, she runs towards the forest, and on the edge of the forest, she sees a dark figure. Now she thinks that's a huntsman, so she sprints towards him. But as the lightning clashes down, she realizes that is definitely not the huntsman. But who is it? Now she screams in fear. And the next morning, when everybody wakes up, Agnes is no more. She's not there. The only thing they find is a veil on the edge of the forest. So let's break down what is historically accurate from this legend. Well, first of all, you already know Himmelthal. Yeah, it exists. It's right there. We know that exists already. Now, back in the medieval times, monasteries and churches and everything that had to do with religion, basically, they amassed a lot of wealth back then. So that is very plausible that this place did too. And when the convents or when the monasteries started to go a little bit astray from their vows, there were church officials that would come here and discipline them. So that is all historically accurate. That could have happened according to the legend. But what is folklore, what is legend, and what don't we have documented that we can prove? Let's start with the main character, Agnes. There's no historical documentation that ever places a nun by that name here in this monastery, nor is that story anywhere referenced in any historical documentation about her fleeing and running towards her huntsman and all of that stuff. A lot of times back then, in the medieval times especially, there were a lot of moral tales. A lot of them had to do with the devil, forbidden love, storms, a lot of chaotic events, and a lot of them had to do with moral, religious reasons. More than likely, this tale has more to do with morality, trying to keep people on the righteous path, than it does with actual history or actual historic events. But it's still a pretty entertaining story, and it's a very beautiful place that we're at today. But I think it's time to go home because the bus is only running every 2 hours today. It is Easter Monday after all. And I want to get home before it gets dark, even though it's light out right now. Trust me, it's going to get dark. And if you are new to the channel and you enjoyed what you see today, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, you already know it, but I appreciate your support each and every week, and I'm glad you're joining me on these adventures. But it is really time to get going. So until next time, adventure awaits.